listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Miami Dolphins fans, and how are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, September the 17th. I am your host, Tom Ernest. On today's episode, we're going to dive into Mike McDaniel's press conference and some of the things he did say and didn't say throughout his press conference. I'm going to dive in and piggyback off Mike Oliva's podcast from, I believe, Sunday or Monday. When it comes to Chris Grier and his massive failures, I'm going to give my thoughts on that, and I'm going to give you my thoughts around the NFL based on week 2 and what I saw watching these games on Sunday. Obviously, with the Dolphins off, my attention was throughout the NFL, so we'll get into that as well. But before we get going, the show is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Miami Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey or birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. If you're not in South Florida, don't worry about it. You can visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you, with also international fans in mind as well. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. Also, a big shout out to everyone listening over at FinHeaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet, and also everyone over at the Facebook group I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan, run by the great Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, be sure to go check them out. All right, let's get into Mike McDaniel's press conference from Monday. Of course, long-winded responses, but I'm going to get into some of the topics. Obviously, the biggest one regarding quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. He was asked right off the bat, is Tua exhibiting any symptoms? How is he feeling, and does he have any symptoms? Obviously, double question on the symptoms. McDaniel's response, he was downstairs today smiling with his teammates. He's working with the trainers and medical staff diligently, and as far as I'm concerned, you're in the protocol, and I think he's doing well today, and we take it day by day. He was feeling good, but what does that mean in terms of medical diagnosis? I don't base my judgments on my interactions with him necessarily as much as it is hearing the end result of the medical examination and where he's at. It was good to see him, and I know his teammates were pumped to see him. When asked, he was also implored people not to worry too much or discuss too much about his future, what's next, to take it day by day. But there was a report yesterday by NFL Network that Tua Tagovailoa is focused on playing football again and coming back. Has he given you any indication? Is that what seems to be the plan for him as he moves forward? Mike McDaniel. Quote, I think as far as Tua's career is concerned, I think it's of utmost priority of mine for Tua to speak on Tua's career. So I think reports are reports. As far as I'm concerned, I'm worried about the human being and where that's at day to day. I think I'll let Tua be the champion of his own career and speak on that. When asked if he was going on injured reserve, he says not enough quite information yet. That's going to be driven by the medical experts, and then we get the appropriate information and discuss with Tua and Chris Grier, and I can discuss that. Not quite ready to make that distinction on that, so that could or couldn't. We'll see in the next coming days. He was also asked, unfortunately, this is something that he has in his history now as far as evaluation and seeing doctors and specialists and all that. Last time he saw independent specialists, are you encouraging him to go that route again this time? He said, absolutely. That is part of his process for sure. So a lot of word salad from Mike McDaniel regarding Tua. First, great news to hear that he is in good spirits and that he is with his teammates and he's in the facility. So that is great news in that regards. Now, when it comes to Tua's future, and that someone asking that injured reserve question, which I think is fantastic, he said not enough information quite yet. The reason being, Tua just met with the neurologist reportedly on Monday. So they are going to be doing, they might have just had consultation. I don't know if there was tests done, but either way, those conversations have happened reportedly, and they're waiting on the result. Now, that result could be in a few days based on his response. We'll see in the next coming days what they do with Tua. Obviously, talking about his future, should he play again, shouldn't he play again? I'm on the page of it is his choice. It doesn't matter what I say, what anybody says on national media, what his teammates think, nothing. The most important aspect of this entire conversation is, what does Tua want to do? Does he want to play? Great. That's his decision. Does he want to step aside, retire, focus on his health? Great. That is Tua's decision. We will hear from Tua when the time comes. If the Miami Dolphins do place him on injured reserve, he will be out minimum 4 games. Those 4 games, if it was to happen in the coming days, the 4 games he misses will be Seattle, Monday night against the Titans, at New England, at Indianapolis. In between there is a bye week. So that would be 5 weeks that he would be off from playing football. So if the team opts to do that, that's in the best interest of Tua. That's the best interest of the team. And we'll see him potentially after the bye week. Now, if there is a retirement talk, if he decides he wants to hang it up and move on from football, we will know that, I would assume, sooner than expected. Based on the report from Ian Rappaport on Sunday, doesn't seem like that's the case. Tua wants to continue to play football. Again, that's Tua's decision. Now, for my opinion, if Tua does want to play football and continue to do this, that guardian cap is going to be on his head. Again, my opinion. He does what he wants to do. It looks hideous. It looks dumb. It can help, right? It can help. Last year he put on all the weight. He sustained the hits. Nothing happened. He goes in and by his own fault does not slide. And we've talked about that in depth. Mike has talked about that in depth. So I'm not going to continue to talk about sliding. But in the end, Tua, no decisions have been made. We'll see what happens in the coming days per Mike McDaniel. Obviously, Wednesday would be a decision. They'd have one player that either has to revert to IR or has to be released, because the Miami Dolphins on Monday signed Snoop Huntley, a.k.a. Tyler Huntley, off the Baltimore Ravens practice squad, which I firmly believe that was the best move they could have made at this point. I know some fans were Ryan Tannehill. Look, Tannehill says he wants to go somewhere where he's the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. The fact that Miami did not bring him in is 2 things. Number 1, he won't be the starter here for the rest of the season, so the job didn't make any sense. And number 2, it's just not a fit. Logically anymore, it's just not a fit. Which of those 2 it is, who knows? But Snoop Huntley does have experience, which is important. He did play games for the Baltimore Ravens. He has 20 games under his belt. He has started 9 games in his 4-year NFL career, all with Baltimore. He was with Cleveland in the offseason. Too many quarterbacks in the room there. He was released, picked back up by Baltimore. He started 4 games in 2021, completing 65% of his passes, 1,081 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. In 2022, he was named a Pro Bowler As a replacement, he went 2-2 in the 4 games he started, 6 games total, 67% completion percentage, 658 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And last year he started 1 game that was against the Steelers in that slop fest in Baltimore. He was 21 of 37, a 56.8% completion percentage, 203 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So why does this make sense? Sunday night, Mike Florio said C.J. Beathard was on the Dolphins' radar as a potential quarterback, obviously for fit and scheme purposes. But it doesn't seem that he is a Mike McDaniel style quarterback, I would imagine. So he was asked about Tyler Huntley and the choice of him being the quarterback brought in. McDaniel responded, in lieu of the fact that you are not going to adhere to the timelines based upon what the science tells us regarding Tua and how we want to approach individual situations and player injuries with that unknown, that was something that ever since it's been apparent from afar. And then having some coaches that have been around him, he was replacing the league MVP, Lamar Jackson, and you could tell from far away that he was a guy that the team absolutely believed could lead them to victory. I think that's a very huge tangible thing for a non-quarterback one necessarily. And so for us, without knowing exact timelines, again, on Tua, we got to learn firsthand a nice reminder of how it only takes one play, and what you think your depth is changes abruptly. So that's a move for moving forward to secure some depth in case of the unforeseen circumstance, which is timelines for us as it relates to Tua. Regarding Huntley and why he was brought in, is he being brought in to serve as the number 2 quarterback behind Skylar Thompson or the number 3 behind Tim Boyle, or compete with Skylar eventually? Mike McDaniel's response, and I'll get into this after I read his quote, says, this was not a move in any way, shape, or form out of anything not that has to do with Skylar. Our team going all the way back to his first rep in rookie minicamp as a rookie to down the stretch of the 22 season to what he was able to do to win the job, number 2 job, which, by the way, was not very difficult if you watched Mike White play in the preseason. This is not any direct reflection of Skylar as to his backup. This is more for depth. I do think that it helps the dynamics of the room to give another guy with starting history to this team and gives another added addition of a guy that's a signal caller that a team can get behind. I was happy adding what we were able to do in the quarterback room in adding Tim Boyle. I don't know why, but I think this is more directly to back up Skylar, and then you always let competition play out when it's out on the field, but it was a depth move for sure. Okay. This has been a plaguing problem for the Miami Dolphins for so many years. What do you mean by that, Tom? Well, I am here to tell you that the word salad that McDaniel said is he doesn't want to hurt Skylar Thompson's confidence. Look, at the end of the day, Skylar Thompson is currently QB1 for the Miami Dolphins. He is QB1 going into a very hard environment in Seattle to try to lead the Miami Dolphins to a much-needed victory to try to salvage the season while they try to figure out what's going on with Tua Tagovailoa. But to say that Tyler Huntley was brought in to back up Skylar Thompson, number 1, okay, makes sense. He's signed to the 53 from a practice squad. He is now officially the backup quarterback. Tim Boyle stays on the practice squad. If Skylar struggles, let's say he does struggle, what's to say that Mike McDaniel won't play Tyler Huntley? Now, behind closed doors and the word salads that he always puts out, there is always a possibility that Tyler Huntley will be playing football for this football team in the very near future. I believe he's a better quarterback than Skylar Thompson. Number 2, he brings an element to this game that I don't think I've seen a Dolphins quarterback do since early Ryan Tannehill days when he was a scrambling quarterback. He has the ability to move. He has starting experience. Skyler has some experience under his belt. Huntley has more experience. You give a week, really 5 days. Here's the playbook, Tyler. Read up. Be ready. Because nothing of substance regarding Skylar Thompson has me feeling 110% confident he's going to be able to navigate this ship for potentially 4 games. The season can go off the rail quickly, and if Skylar Thompson really struggles in Seattle, Huntley's going to be the guy. He's got to be, right? I hope Skylar is ready. I hope he performs better than he did in the preseason. I hope he looks better than the almost quarter of football he played against the Buffalo Bills last Thursday night. He needs to be ready. And if he's not up to the task, you have to have someone ready to do it. Huntley is I wouldn't say a game-changing quarterback, but he brings an element that defenses have to respect, especially with the Dolphins' run game. And that's the ability to run. So a good move by the Dolphins. I like the move for Huntley. I didn't think they had the gumption to make that move for Huntley. Figured it was going to be just status quo, Mike McDaniel guys through and through. This is a complete 180 from what I thought, and I applaud the move. I think it's good. Teron Armstead is hurt. He left the game early against Buffalo. Mike McDaniel said he is day-to-day. So what it looks like, I feel it's definitely more day-to-day situation, so he's optimistic Teron Armstead will be able to suit up. We'll wait for Wednesday's injury report to come out, but most likely Armstead is either going to be limited or did not practice, as he was a lot through the first 2 years of his career in Miami. Wednesday, no practice. Thursday, no practice. Friday, limited. We'll see if he does log some practice reps, and if he does, then he's got a good shot of playing. Now, one of the last questions I'll go through before we get into the Chris Grier failures, in my opinion, is the question, upon review of the film, why was it so hard to get Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle the ball consistently against the Bills? Mind you, in certain key third down situations, the wide receivers that were on the field for the Miami Dolphins was Grant DuBose, Robbie Chosen, and Braxton Berrios, with Hill and Waddle on the sideline. Okay? Take that into consideration while I read this. He says, while I think there's football is definitely a team sport, offensive football, when a team is committing, when a defensive team or opponent is committing to take somebody away, you have to make them pay appropriately. I think the ops are still there. They just might not be as multiple when you're having a two-man player. You have two people guarding one on rundown. So I think what's cool about Reek and Jaylen and their understanding of football and really our offense is there's certain situations where it doesn't happen that often, but they'll come to the sideline and tell me, hey, you know what? We need to run the ball. What they're saying is they know there's not a run-fit player. They know that the safety in the corner aren't even looking at the ball during our play action. So we have to execute and make people pay when they are overplaying something. I think that teams have a lot of reason to focus on those guys, and I think collectively it's a group effort to get them more involved because they are, the case in point, the rest of the offense is an advantageous situation if they're going to fully commit the way that some teams have been. That you always have to keep them involved, but there's a balance where teammates have to really make opposing teams pay if they're going to overcommit that way. And until we do, I think they understand as much as everybody else that teams will do something, you make them pay for it. Holy word salad, let me just cut to the chase here. You don't take your two best players off the field for a guy who just had his first NFL target that bounced off his face mask for an interception, Grant DuBose, a guy you can't rely on in Braxton Berrios, and a guy that can't run a route in Robbie Chosen. You take your two best players off the field because you want to run? You want to make defenses think? That's great in theory. But it doesn't work that way. For me personally, it doesn't work that way. You can have a player on the field and say, hey, we're running the football, and you just run the football. So I understand why you'd have the two best players on offense stand on the sidelines because you think you're going to catch them off guard by running the ball or throwing the ball to guys that can't catch the ball. Because that's been an issue for 2 games this year. Sometimes, and I really do like Mike McDaniel, sometimes he overthinks it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this team comes out week 3 with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, and obviously a lot of time to think of what is wrong with the Miami Dolphins offense. Because the offense is a problem. When you give the ball to the Bills for 4 scoring drives, and they game on Thursday night, and the average starting position of those drives was a Dolphins 46-yard line, well, you have an offensive problem. Mike McDaniel, you need to fix the problem. One way to fix it is not throwing the ball to Grant Dubose, Robbie Chosen, or Braxton Berrios. Can go a long way to solve some of your offensive woes. All right. Man, I'm fired up for this show. All right, let's get in real quick. Chris Grier failures, because this has been a topic, particularly on our podcast as of the last few days. I'm going to get in my thoughts as well. So we remember the warm and fuzzies from PFF after week 1 against the Jaguars and the Dolphins having a pass blocking grade that was in the top 5 in the NFL. Liam Eichenberg posted like a 80 grade or something like that. And then they go against the Bills 3 days later and throw probably the worst blocking performance I have ever seen. And you all know, we've played the clip a million times. You've probably seen it on your social medias. Chris Grier laughing, well, you guys are more worried about the offensive line than we are. We feel good with the guys that we have. Well, your quarterback had no time to throw. He found himself looking up at the lights multiple times before he was concussed and knocked out of the game. You're giving the quarterback 0 time to do anything. And this is a quick passing offense. And when you have someone literally at your feet, when you're trying to throw a football, or you have 3 offensive linemen looking in the wrong direction, watching their 3 supposed guys they were supposed to block in the quarterback's face, you have a problem. You have a fundamental problem. And you didn't address the problem. And the problem still won't be addressed. You have liabilities on the offensive line. Robert Jones, good run blocker, terrible pass blocker. And you're trying to throw the ball 35 times a game. Liam Eichenberg, I'm not even going to get into it. You can give me on a 10-minute rant on how bad Liam Eichenberg has been playing. Around Brewer, his snaps are all over the place. It's throwing off the timing of the offense. So your fix for losing Robert Hunt and Connor Williams, and so far Isaiah Wynn, and please get better Isaiah Wynn, because you could be an upgrade over what we're seeing, and that's not saying a lot. It's not saying a lot. Not only that, the Bills absolutely gashed the Dolphins up the middle with James Cook. And why? Because Benito Jones is your starting nose tackle. Benito Jones got cut or wasn't even re-signed to the Detroit Lions run by Dan Campbell. Massive flaws in roster construction. You brought in 5 guys and kept 1. And the one that you kept is no good. And the biggest pet peeve of all, and again, I'm not going to harp on it because it's been talked about till we're blue in the face, but you guys, I wanted you to hear my thoughts on it too. There was no plan. After you signed the quarterback to a lucrative extension, you did nothing to fix the offensive line, knowing that was going to happen. And you didn't have a capable Second-string quarterback. You mean to tell me that you sat and watched 3 preseason games worth of Mike White and Skylar Thompson and said, whew, man, this is good quarterback play against second, third stringers? They sucked against those guys. Those guys are bagging groceries. And you still stuck with Skylar Thompson when there were other options on the table. Mind-numbing. And like Mike Oliva said in his article, which is up at DolphinsTalk.com, great article, accountability needs to happen. And it starts at the top. All right. Let's go around the NFL. A lot of stuff happened over the weekend. I'm just going to go blitzing through these games real quick and just give you my thoughts on what we saw throughout the NFL through week 2. Big surprise in Baltimore. The Ravens completely fell apart. The Raiders take advantage of it, 26-23, and the Ravens have a fundamental problem. They're not running the football, so that has to get addressed for them. Browns defeated the Jaguars 18-13. Deshaun Watson had an okay game. The Jaguars stink, which doesn't bode well for that Week 1 win for the Dolphins, that the Jaguars are still this bad. The Jets escaped Tennessee 24-17. You could thank Will Levis for gift wrapping the second straight game, gift wrapping a win for an opposing team. As Coach Brian Callahan has lost his mind on Will Levis, and we'll see them in a couple weeks. The Vikings absolutely upset the 49ers, who now have more injury problems with Deebo Samuel out longer period of time. Chargers stopped the Panthers to the point where Bryce Young is now benched for Andy Dalton. The Seahawks escaped New England 23-20, Dolphins opponent next week. Overall, what I took away from that is Geno Smith is still a capable quarterback. He's feeding the ball to DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba. 30 targets out of the 44 passes went to those two players, so the Dolphins have to be prepared for that. But from a defensive perspective, you can definitely run the football on Seattle, and you can hit those quick passes, so that kind of plays to what we think are the Dolphins' strengths. The Saints annihilated the Cowboys. Did the Saints have the best offense in football through 2 weeks with Derek Carr? The answer is yes. The Commanders scored the Giants scored 3 touchdowns and lost 21-18. 7 field goals from Austin Seibert, and the Giants are the first team in NFL history to score 3 touchdowns in a game and lose to a team who scored 0 touchdowns. Hello, Giants. The Bucs upset the Lions 20-16. Very good defensive performance from Tampa. Baker Mayfield made enough plays to get the job done. The Packers ran all over the Colts 16-10. Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out party, 4 catches, 130 yards, and multiple touchdowns. Destroy the Rams, who now get more injury news. And I don't know what Sean McVay did to the football gods, but that is just unfair if you look at the list of guys that are out for them. Steelers win 13-6 in a barn burner in Denver. The Chiefs escape, thank you to the referees. It was defensive pass interference, folks. Let's leave it as it is. 25-26, and the Texans in a defensive slugfest take care of the Bears with 7 sacks defensively. We see Houston in the future this season for the Miami Dolphins. So that will do it for the show. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Be sure to follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at DolphinsTalkTom. Be sure to go to the site DolphinsTalk.com for all the latest Miami Dolphins news and information. We have shows all week lined up, getting ready for the Seattle game, which kicks off at 4:05 p.m., followed by the post-game wrap-up show with Mike Oliva and myself. I hope you all have a great Tuesday, and we'll talk to you again after a while. Fins up. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. Be sure to visit DolphinsTalk.com every day for all of your latest Miami Dolphins news.